Welcome back to the deep dive. We love to get into the nitty-gritty and really dissect some complex stuff.
Absolutely. And today we're going to tackle something that might seem pretty basic at first glance, but trust me, there's more to it than meets the eye.
We're talking long division.
Yeah, you might remember it from back in your school days, all those steps in that division symbol.
But we're not just going to rehash the how-to here. We're going to dig into why it works, the logic behind it, and how it connects to bigger mathematical ideas.
Because believe it or not, long division is a surprisingly powerful tool. It's not just about getting the right answer. It's about understanding a fundamental process.
Think about it this way. Let's say you have a giant batch of 432 cookies.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
And you want to divide them equally among 15 friends.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Now we're talking real-world problems.
How do you figure out exactly how many cookies each person gets and if you'll have any leftovers?
Right, that's where long division comes in. And really understanding its method gives you a much deeper insight into how numbers work. It's like seeing the machinery behind the scenes.
Exactly. So if you're ready to become a long division master and see how this seemingly simple operation can unlock a whole world of mathematical understanding, stick with us. You'll be surprised at what you discover.
Plus, who doesn't love a good cookie analogy? All right, let's get started.
So let's break this down. In every long division problem, there are some key players, or what we like to call the crew. First up, you've got the dividend. That's the number that's being divided, like our 432 cookies.
And then you have the divisor, the number you are dividing by, in this case, our 15 cookie-loving friends.
Right. The result of our division, the answer we are trying to find, is called the quotient. So that's going to tell us how many cookies each friend gets.
And finally, we have the remainder. That's any amount that's left over after you've divided everything up as evenly as possible. Those extra crumbs, so to speak.
Now it's really important to remember that the remainder is always smaller than the divisor.
Absolutely. If it's not, it means you could have divided further. There's still some splitting up to do.
A good way to remember the difference between dividend and divisor. The dividend is what you have, and the divisor is who you are giving it to. Okay, now that we've got our crew sorted out, how do we actually set up a long division problem?
Well, you start by writing the dividend, that's the 432 cookies, under a little roof-like symbol, the division bar. It's sometimes called the house.
Right, like we're building a little house for our division problem, and to the left of this house, we write the divisor, those 15 friends.
Exactly. And the answer, our quotient, that will go on top of the roof of our house.
Okay, so we've got our problem set up. Now what?
Now comes the fun part, the actual dividing. And we do this using 4 main steps that you can remember with a handy mnemonic. DMSB, that stands for divide, multiply, subtract, bring down.
Oh, yes, good old DMSB. I remember learning that. But there are other mnemonics out there too, right? Some people find those a bit more memorable.
Oh, absolutely. Whatever helps you remember the order. Some people use Does McDonald sell burgers, or even dad, mom, sister, brother.
It's all about finding what clicks for you.
And what's really fascinating here is that these 4 simple steps, when followed consistently, can help you solve even really complex division problems.
Okay, so let's take each of those DMSB steps one by one. First up, divide. We look at the first part of the dividend and ask ourselves, how many times can the divisor fit into this part without going over?
And a helpful tip here, if you're not sure off the top of your head, is to jot down the first few multiples of your divisor on the side. So for 15, you could write down 15, 30, 45, and so on.
That's a great tip. So you're basically figuring out how many whole groups of the divisor you can fit into that section of the dividend.
Right. And once you figure that out, you write that number, the number of times the divisor fits in, above the corresponding digit in the dividend.
Okay, so that's divide. What's next?
Next is multiply. You take the number you just wrote down as part of the quotient and multiply it by the entire divisor. So in our cookie example, if we found that 15 goes into 43 twice, we'd write 2 above the 3 in the dividend, and then we'd multiply 2 by 15.
And that gives us 30. So what do we do with that 30?
That brings us to our third step, subtract. You write the result of your multiplication, in this case 30, directly below the part of the dividend you're working with, and you subtract.
So 43 minus 30, that gives us 13.
Exactly. And here's a really important point. The result of your subtraction must be smaller than your divisor. If it's not, it means you could have fit the divisor in one more time back in the divide step.
That's a good check to keep in mind.
Definitely. It's easy to make a mistake and overshoot.
Okay, so we've divided, multiplied, and subtracted. What's the final step?
The final step is bring down. You bring down the next digit of the dividend and write it next to the result of your subtraction.
So in our example, we'd bring down the 2 from 432 and write it next to the 13, making it 132.
Exactly. And that new number, that 132, becomes what you'll work with in the next round of our DMSB cycle. It's like carrying over any leftover from the previous division.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. It's like a little cycle.
Exactly. And that brings us to the key, repeat. You go right back to the divide step and run through divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down again. And you keep doing that until you've used up all the digits in your dividend.
So it's like a dance. You just keep doing the same steps over and over until you reach the end of the music.
I like that analogy. And once you've gone through all the digits, you might have a number left over after your last subtraction. If that number is smaller than your divisor and you have no more digits to bring down, that's your remainder.
Right, and we usually write the remainder at the end of our quotient with a capital R in front of it. So in our cookie example, if we end up with a remainder of 3, we'd write our answer as 28R3. That means each friend gets 28 cookies, and we have 3 cookies left over.
Precisely. The remainder represents what's left after you've divided as evenly as possible.
You know, when you think about it, long division is really just a fancy way of doing repeated subtraction, and you're just doing it in a very organized and efficient way.
Absolutely. You're breaking down the division into smaller, manageable steps. And remembering that order of operations, the DMSB, is key. Plus, like we mentioned before, having a good grasp of your multiplication facts makes the divide step so much easier.
Definitely. Okay, are you ready to see this in action with some real examples?
Let's do it. Fire away with an example.
Okay, let's start with a fairly simple one, 69 divided by 3.
All right, so our first step is divide. We look at the first digit of our dividend, which is 6, and we ask ourselves, how many times does 3 fit into 6?
Well, 3 times 2 is 6, so it fits in exactly twice.
Perfect. So you write the 2 above the 6 in the dividend.
Got it. What's next?
Now we multiply. You multiply that 2, the number we just wrote down, by the divisor, which is 3. That gives us 6.
Okay, and where do we write that 6?
You write it directly below the 6 in the dividend.
So now we have 69 with a 6 underneath the first 6.
Right, and then we subtract, so 6 minus 6 is
0.
Exactly. And finally, we bring down the next digit of the dividend, the 9, and place it next to R0, which gives us 9.
Okay, so now what? Do we start all over again?
You got it. Back to the divide step we go. How many times does 3 fit into 9?
That's easy. 3 times, so we write a 3 above the 9 in our quotient.
Perfect. Now multiply that 3 by our divisor, which is still 3. What do we get?
That's 9. We write that below the 9 we just brought down.
You're a natural at this. All right, next step. Subtract. What's 9 minus 9?
0 again.
And we have no more digits to bring down, which means our remainder is 0. So our final answer is 23. 69 divided by 3 is 23. See? Not so bad, right?
That was pretty painless.
Let's do another one while we're on a roll. How about 84 divided by 2?
Okay, 84 divided by 2. So we start by seeing how many times 2 goes into the first digit of our dividend, which is 8. And that's 4 times because 2 times 4 is 8. So I write a 4 above the 8 in our dividend.
Right on. Then we multiply that 4 by the divisor, 2, which gives us 8. Write that below the first 8 in the dividend.
So now it looks like 84 with an 8 under the first 8. Okay, time to subtract. 8 minus 8 is 0.
And what's our next move?
We bring down the next digit, which is 4, and write it next to the 0. So now we have 04, or just 4.
And back to the top. Divide. How many times does 2 go into 4?
Twice. 2 times 2 is 4. I write a 2 above the 4 in the quotient.
All right, now multiply that 2 by our divisor, 2, and we get.
Or we write that below the other 4.
Last step for this round, subtract. What's 4 minus 4?
0. And no more digits to bring down, so our remainder is 0 again. That means 84 divided by 2 is 42. Piece of cake.
You're getting a hang of this. Those were nice, clean examples where the division worked out perfectly. But let's see what happens when we have some leftovers. How about 75 divided by 4?
Okay, let's see. 75 divided by 4. So we start by asking, how many times does 4 go into the first digit, which is 7?
And remember, it has to fit without going over.
Right, so 4 goes into 7 once because 1 times 4 is 4. If we tried twice, that would be 8, which is too big. So we write a 1 above the 7 in the dividend.
Good. What's our next step?
Multiply. 1 times 4 is 4, so we write that 4 below the 7.
Next.
Subtract. 7 minus 4 is 3.
Perfect. And then?
We bring down the next digit, which is 5, and write it next to the 3. So now we have 35.
Great. Back to the top. Divide. How many times does 4 go into 35?
Let's see. 4 times 8 is 32, and 4 times 9 is 36, so that's too high. So 4 goes into 35 8 times. I write an 8 above the 5 in the quotient.
Now what?
Multiply. 8 times 4 is 32. I write that 32 below the 35.
Subtract time. What's 35 minus 32?
That's 3. And 3 is smaller than our divisor, 4, so it's our remainder. We've used all the digits, so our final answer is 18 remainder 3.
Nicely done. You handled that remainder like a pro. And remember, it makes sense that the remainder is smaller than the divisor because it's what's left over after you've divided as many times as you possibly can.
Right. Okay, let's try one more with a remainder. How about 845 divided by 3?
All right, game on. 845 divided by 3. Divide, how many times does 3 go into the first digit, which is 8?
It goes in twice because 2 times 3 is 6. I write a 2 above the 8.
Okay, multiply.
2 times 3 is 6. I write that 6 below the 8 in the dividend.
And subtract.
8 minus 6 is 2.
What's next?
We bring down the 4 and write it next to the 2, which gives us 24.
Back to the top. How many times does 3 go into 24?
3 goes into 24 exactly 8 times. Because 3 times 8 is 24, I write an 8 above the 4 in the quotient.
And multiply.
8 times 3 is 24, so I write that 24 below the other 24.
All right, subtract.
24 minus 24 is 0.
And
We bring down the last digit, 5, and write it next to the 0, giving us 5.
divide again. How many times does 3 go into 5?
It goes in once because 1 times 3 is 3. I write a 1 above the 5 in the quotient.
Okay, multiply.
1 times 3 is 3, so I write a 3 below the 5.
And our final subtraction, 5 minus 3, is
2. And that's our remainder because 2 is smaller than our divisor, 3. So the answer to 845 divided by 3 is 281, remainder 2.
That was excellent. You're getting really good at this. You've mastered single-digit divisors. Ready to try some double-digit divisor?
Oh boy, I don't know.
I promise it's not as scary as it seems. The process is exactly the same, just with slightly bigger numbers. Shall we give it a go?
All right, let's do it. Hit me with a problem.
Okay, how about 1,752 divided by 24?
1,752 divided by 24. Wow, okay. Deep breaths. So our divisor is 24, which has 2 digits. So first we need to look at the first 2 digits of our dividend, which are 17. Does 24 fit into 17?
Nope, it's too big.
So we need to look at the first 3 digits. 175, how many times does 24 go into 175? This is where it gets tricky.
Here's a helpful trick for you. Estimation. Instead of trying to calculate exactly how many times 24 goes into 175, let's round 24 to 25. And 25 goes into 175 about 7 times, because 25 times 7 is 175.
Ah, that's a great idea. So we're basically using our knowledge of quarters to help us out here.
Exactly. And it's much easier to work with multiples of 25 in our heads. Now we need to check if 7 works with 24. What's 24 times 7?
Let me see. 24 times 7 is 168. That's pretty close.
It is. And if we tried 8, 24 times 8 is 192, which is too big. So 7's the magic number. 24 goes into 175 7 times. So we write a 7 above the 5 in the dividend.
So that estimation trick was really helpful. I wouldn't have known where to start otherwise.
Estimation is your friend in long division, especially with larger divisors. All right, let's continue. What's next?
Multiply. 7 times 24, which we already figured out is 168. We write that below 175.
Okay, subtract time. 175 minus 168 is
7.
And then
We bring down the next digit, which is 2, and write it next to the 7, making it 72.
Great. Back to the top. Divide. How many times does 24 go into 72?
Let me think. 24 times 3 is 72. It goes in exactly 3 times. So I write a 3 above the 2 on the dividend.
And multiply.
3 times 24 is 72, and we write that below the other 72.
Last step. Subtract. What's 72 minus 72?
0. No remainder, and we've used all the digits. So our final answer is 73. 1,752 divided by 24 equals 73. We conquered the double-digit divisor.
You did it. See? Not so scary after all, right? Ready for one more challenge before we move on?
Bring it on.
All right, let's try 962 divided by 20.
Okay, 962 divided by 20. Our divisor is 20, so we start by looking at the first digit of the dividend, which is 9. Does 20 fit into 90?
Yep, too big.
So we look at the first 2 digits, 96. How many times does 20 go into 96? Well, I know 20 times 4 is 80, and 20 times 5 is 100, which is too big. So 20 goes into 96 4 times. I write a 4 above the 6 in the dividend.
Perfect. Now what?
Multiply. 4 times 20 is 80, so I write 80 below 96.
Then,
Subtract 96 minus 80 is 16.
and...
I bring down the next digit, which is 2, and write it next to the 16, making it 162.
Okay, back to the top. Divide. How many times does 20 go into 162?
Let's see. 20 times 8 is 160, and 20 times 9 is 180, which is too high. So 8 it is. I write an 8 above the 2 in the dividend.
And multiply.
8 times 20 is 160. I write that below the 162.
Subtract.
162 minus 160 is 2, and that's our remainder because 2 is smaller than our divisor, 20. So the answer to 962 divided by 20 is 48, remainder 2.
You are officially a long division rock star. I'm impressed. You've handled single-digit divisors, double-digit divisors, remainders, everything I've thrown at you.
I have to say, I'm feeling pretty confident about my long division skills now. But, I think a lot of people, when they learn long division, they kind of wonder, when am I ever going to actually use this in real life? It seems like something you just learn for school and then forget about.
That's a really common question. But the truth is, long division is more relevant to our daily lives than you might think. It pops up in all sorts of practical situations.
Give me some examples.
Absolutely. Think about sharing. Let's say you have 156 crayons, and you want to divide them equally among 12 friends.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Using long division, 156 divided by 12, you can quickly figure out that each friend gets 13 crayons. It helps you be fair and make sure everyone gets an equal share.
That's a good one. What else?
How about budgeting? Let's say you see a pack of 25 cookies on sale for $5.75, and you want to know how much each cookie costs.
Yeah, sometimes those bulk packs can be deceiving. You think you're getting a great deal, but then you realize each cookie is actually pretty expensive.
Exactly. But long division comes to the rescue. $5.75 divided by 25 tells you that each cookie costs $0.23. So you can make informed decisions at the grocery store.
So it's not just for dividing cookies, it's for dividing money, too.
Precisely. It's a versatile tool. Here's another one. Let's say you're organizing a photo album and you have 285 pictures that you want to fit on pages that hold 9 pictures each.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. You don't want to end up with a bunch of leftover pictures that don't fit on a page.
Long division can help you avoid that. 285 divided by 9 tells you that you'll need 31 full pages with a remainder of 6. So you know to get a 30-second page for those last 6 pictures.
So it helps you plan and stay organized.
Absolutely. And let's say you're organizing a field trip for 427 students, and the buses you're renting can each hold 42 students.
That's a lot of kids.
It is. But with long division, you can quickly figure out that you'll need 10 buses with a remainder of 7 students. So you'll actually need to book 11 buses to make sure everyone has a seat.
So long division helps you make sure no one gets left behind.
Exactly. It's all about dividing a total into equal parts or figuring out how many equal groups you can form. And those are skills that come in handy in countless situations.
You know, I'm starting to realize that long division is actually a pretty useful skill to have, even if we don't always think about it consciously. It helps us share things fairly, manage our money wisely, and plan things effectively.
It's one of those fundamental math concepts that has a surprising amount of real-world application.
Okay, so we've covered the basics of long division, the steps, how it works, and even some real-life examples. But let's be honest, long division can be a bit tricky. There are a lot of steps, and it's easy to make mistakes. What are some common pitfalls that people should watch out for?
Oh, there are definitely some common mistakes that people make. But the good news is that being aware of them can help you avoid them.
Okay, give us the lowdown. What are the biggest things to watch out for?
Well, one very common mistake is misunderstanding place value.
Ah, right. It's easy to get so focused on the numbers themselves that you forget about whether you're dealing with ones, tens, hundreds, and so on.
Exactly. So when you're writing out your long division problem, it's super important to keep your numbers lined up neatly in columns. That way, you don't accidentally subtract a tens digit from a ones digit, for example.
That's a good tip. What else?
Another frequent mix-up is confusing the quotient and the remainder.
Oh, yeah. I remember sometimes I would write the remainder above the division bar and the quotient at the end with the R.
It's an easy mistake to make, especially when you're first learning. But remember, the quotient is the main answer that goes on top of the division bar, and the remainder is what's left over at the very end, written after the quotient with an R.
Right, so keep those two straight in our minds. Location, location, location.
Exactly. And because long division has multiple steps, it's easy to accidentally skip one or do them out of order.
Especially when you're feeling rushed or stressed, it's easy to get flustered.
Absolutely. That's why those mnemonics like DMSB are so helpful. Writing the mnemonic down at the top of your page can serve as a great reminder to keep you on track. It's like a little checklist.
Like having a little guide to help you through the process.
Right. Now, this might seem obvious, but strong multiplication skills are absolutely essential for long division.
Oh, absolutely. If you don't know your multiplication facts, you're going to have a really tough time with those divide and multiply steps.
Exactly. Those steps rely heavily on multiplication, so if your times tables are shaky, you're much more likely to make mistakes. Practicing your multiplication facts is a must. It will make your long division life so much easier.
And it's not just about memorizing the multiplication table. It's also about being able to quickly figure out multiples of your divisor.
You're right, and that's where that trick of writing out the first few multiples of your divisor before you start the problem can be really helpful. It's like creating a little cheat sheet for yourself.
Oh, that's a great idea. It saves you from having to do a bunch of calculations in your head.
Exactly. Another common mistake is forgetting to bring down the next digit.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. You get so focused on the subtraction that you totally space on bringing down the next number.
It happens all the time. But remember, the bring down step is crucial. Without it, you can't continue the process. So after each subtraction, make sure you bring down just one digit and write it next to the result of your subtraction.
It's like adding a new ingredient to your recipe. Don't forget to bring down that next digit.
I love that. So in a nutshell, many mistakes in long division come down to either shaky multiplication skills or not consistently following the steps in the correct order. So practice those times tables, use your mnemonics, and stay focused, and you'll be well on your way to long division mastery.
Okay, so we've covered what not to do. What about some positive tips and tricks? What can we do to make long division easier and less daunting?
There are definitely some strategies that can help you conquer long division and maybe even make it a little bit fun.
Oh, fun. I don't know about that, but I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, as we mentioned before, one of the best things you can do is write out the first few multiples of your divisor before you even start the long division. It just makes the divide step so much quicker and easier.
It takes some of the mental math out of it.
Exactly. And if you're ever unsure about how many times the divisor goes into a part of the dividend, remember the think big, check small strategy?
Think big, check small. What's that?
It's just a way of using estimation to help you narrow down your choices. So if you're not sure if the divisor goes in 5 times or 6 times, try the bigger number first.
Okay, so let's say I think the divisor goes into the dividend 6 times. What do I do?
Multiply 6 by the divisor. If the result is bigger than the part of the dividend you're working with, you know you need to go down to 5.
Ah, so it's like testing the waters to see if you're in the right ballpark.
Exactly. And if the result is smaller, you might be able to go up to 7. It's just a way of using a little trial and error to help you find the right number.
That's a helpful strategy. It takes some of the pressure off trying to get it right on the first try.
It does. And don't try to solve the whole problem in your head at once. Long division is a step-by-step process. Focus on one part of the dividend at a time.
Right, break it down into bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. Don't get overwhelmed by the big picture. Just focus on what you're doing right now. And before you even start the long division, it's always a good idea to estimate your answer.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to check if your final answer makes sense. If your estimate is in the hundreds, but your actual answer is in the tens, you've probably made a mistake somewhere.
Precisely. It's a quick and easy way to catch errors. And speaking of catching errors, always check your work.
Right, after you've done all that dividing, multiplying, subtracting, and bringing down, it's time to make sure you didn't make any mistakes along the way.
Exactly. And the way to check your answer is simple. Multiply your quotient by your divisor and then add your remainder. If that total matches your original dividend, you know you've done it correctly.
So it's like reversing the process to make sure it all adds up.
Precisely. And a visual tip for those who struggle with keeping numbers aligned, try using graph paper.
Ah, that's a good idea. The grid lines make it much easier to keep your columns straight.
It can make a big difference, especially for visual learners. And lastly, if that classic DMSB mnemonics just doesn't stick for you, don't be afraid to experiment with other mnemonics.
Right, we mentioned a few earlier, like does McDonald's sell burgers? But there are tons of them out there. Find one that resonates with you, even if it seems silly.
Absolutely. The sillier, the better sometimes. It's all about making long division less intimidating and more approachable.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. Before we wrap things up, let's tackle a few frequently asked questions that often pop up when people are learning long division.
Sounds good. Let's clarify some things.
Okay, so first up, what exactly is the